A small town, nestled in the countryside, quiet and peaceful, was where Sarah had grown up. But life for her was far from calm. Sarah's world had been shattered from a young age with no escape in sight. Every day felt like an eternity in the midst of an overwhelming storm, but it wasn't the weather that caused her suffering. It was her home. At the age of 16, Sarah had already lived through more pain than many could imagine in a lifetime. Her mother, once a beacon of strength, had passed away when Sarah was just 10, leaving her to grow up under the roof of her father, a man with a darkness inside of him that no one knew about. His anger was unpredictable, like a storm that would burst out with little warning, leaving destruction in its wake. The fists, the cruel words, the coldness. He seemed to enjoy her pain. Sarah's father wasn't a man that could be reasoned with. He could be kind for moments, offering fleeting glimpses of the man he used to be, but they were few and far between. Most of the time his eyes were filled with rage, and Sarah, still a child, had to endure it all. She could never predict when the storm would come, but when it did, it was always violent. The only source of comfort in Sarah's life was her horse, a beautiful chestnut mare named Bella. Bella was her refuge, her sanctuary from the world of pain and chaos she had grown accustomed to. Sarah had always felt a bond with Bella since the first time she saw her, a bond that was stronger than anything she had ever felt before. It wasn't just the horse. It was Bella's silent understanding of her pain, her quiet presence that offered Sarah a feeling of safety that no human could. Sarah had been riding Bella almost every day for the past few years, escaping her father's wrath when it became too much to bear. Bella was her only companion in this harsh world, and it seemed like no matter how much Sarah suffered, Bella was there, unwavering. The bond between them had become inseparable. In Bella's eyes, Sarah found a silent promise. No matter what happened, she wouldn't be alone. But then, one evening, something changed. The sun had set, casting a soft golden hue across the horizon as Sarah stood in the barn, brushing Bella's coat. It was just another typical evening, or so she thought. But as the air grew colder, something in the atmosphere felt different. The barn door creaked as it blew open slightly, a chill draft slipping through. Sarah shivered and turned, her instincts telling her something was wrong. She looked out into the dimming light of the evening. That's when she saw him. Her father, standing by the fence, his figure looming in the distance. She had no idea what he was doing there, but she knew enough to be terrified. His eyes were wild, filled with anger, and his voice rang out harshly as he yelled at her to come out. For the first time in a long while, Sarah felt her heart race. Her body went stiff as the weight of his presence hung over her. She had spent the last few months trying to avoid him, to protect herself from his unpredictability. And now he was coming for her again. "Sarah!" her father shouted, his voice laced with venom. She froze. She wanted to run, to hide, but she couldn't. She looked to Bella, but the horse was standing still, quietly grazing as though it had no idea of the storm that was about to hit. Her father walked closer, and Sarah felt her pulse quicken. There was nowhere to hide. She was trapped. But as she slowly turned to face him, something inside her sparked. She wasn't a little girl anymore. She had grown stronger over the years, even if the pain never fully went away. But it didn't matter. What was about to happen would change her life forever. Every day felt like a battle for Jessica. Her father, a man hardened by his years in the military, struggled to find peace within himself, and sadly, he had never learned how to express affection or love. Instead, the only way he knew to cope with his inner demons was through anger and violence. The years of physical and emotional abuse weighed heavily on Jessica, leaving scars on her heart and soul that never seemed to heal. Every morning, she woke up bracing herself for whatever verbal or physical assault awaited her, unsure of how much longer she could endure. By the time she was 17, Jessica's life had become a repetitive cycle of hiding from her father's rage. There was no escape at home, no refuge to be found in her own room. She had grown accustomed to the sound of her father's heavy footsteps, the way his temper flared without any warning, turning the air in the house cold and hostile. Jessica learned to keep her head down, to say nothing, and to do everything she could to avoid making him angry. But no matter how hard she tried, it was impossible to stop the inevitable moments when his fury would boil over. Despite her attempts to disconnect from the pain, she couldn't ignore the toll it was taking on her. Each day, her father's harsh words and the slaps that followed were wearing her down. And with every bruise and every broken word, Jessica's spirit seemed to break just a little more. But no matter how difficult it became, there was one thing she could always count on. Thunder. Thunder was more than just a horse to Jessica. He was her only friend, her confidant, and her protector. Every time Jessica ran to the stable, seeking comfort from the world's weight, Thunder was there. His presence was a balm for her wounded heart. He could always sense when she needed him the most. When the world seemed too dark to navigate, she would climb onto his back, feeling his steady gait beneath her, and for a brief moment, everything else disappeared. Thunder's gentle nature gave her the courage to keep going, to push through the emotional fog that clouded her days. But despite her deep connection with Thunder, things were getting worse at home. Her father's anger was growing more erratic, his outbursts more frequent. Jessica knew that one day things might escalate to a point where she couldn't hide anymore. She didn't have anyone to turn to, and the thought of running away felt impossible. The place where she had grown up, the place she should have been safe in, had become a prison. The days passed in a blur, each one feeling harder than the last. But on one fateful night, after her father's rage had erupted yet again, Jessica found herself once more in the stable, her tears falling freely into Thunder's thick mane. She felt completely alone, like the world had abandoned her, and she couldn't see a way out. But Thunder, as if sensing the depth of her despair, did something that took her completely by surprise. Instead of standing quietly as he normally did, he nudged her, lightly at first, then more insistently. It was as if he understood that she needed something more than just her tears. She didn't know what he was trying to tell her, but his behavior felt different. Something inside her stirred. Without saying a word, Thunder pushed open the door of the stable and stepped out into the open field, leading her away from the familiar confines of the barn. Jessica hesitated. She had never seen Thunder act this way before. She had always been the one to seek comfort in him. But now, he was the one guiding her, pushing her towards something new. His gentle nudge seemed like a silent invitation, a sign that it was time to take a step forward, even though she didn't know where that step would lead. In the quiet of the night, with only the soft sounds of Thunder's hooves breaking the silence, Jessica followed him. It was a quiet, uncertain walk, but for the first time in what felt like ages, something in Jessica's heart began to open. She didn't know where Thunder was leading her, but somehow, for the first time, she felt the possibility of a future outside the pain she had known for so long. Jessica followed Thunder in a trance-like state, her mind still swirling from the explosion of anger that had just unfolded at home. The sound of his hooves hitting the soft earth beneath them was the only thing that anchored her, the rhythmic sound acting like a lullaby in the middle of her storm. Thunder's quiet but confident movements felt purposeful, as if he knew exactly where they needed to go. The cold air nipped at her skin, but it was nothing compared to the emotional chill that had settled in her heart. Her thoughts raced. Why was Thunder acting so strangely tonight? Why was he leading her into the unknown? She had always felt safe in his presence, but now there was an urgency to his movements that made her nervous, yet somehow hopeful. They walked for what felt like hours, the dark woods surrounding them thick with silence, save for the occasional rustling of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. Jessica's legs were growing tired, but Thunder's pace never faltered. It was as though he was taking her somewhere important, somewhere she needed to be, even if she couldn't understand why. Finally, they arrived at a small clearing, bathed in the pale light of the moon. The forest seemed to open up before her, offering a temporary respite from the oppressive weight of her home. It was serene here. peaceful. For the first time in what felt like forever, Jessica could breathe. But just as she was starting to relax, she noticed something in the distance. A flicker of movement. Another figure standing in the shadows, hidden by the trees. A shiver ran down Jessica's spine as her heart began to race. She could barely make out the shape of a man standing there, his posture rigid. He was tall and broad-shouldered, his face obscured by the darkness, but she could feel his presence looming over her. The world seemed to stand still as she and Thunder both froze in place. "Thunder?" Jessica whispered softly, her voice shaking. Her heart pounded in her chest. Was this another one of her father's cruel tricks? Had he followed her out here? But before she could make another move, Thunder stepped forward, leading Jessica directly toward the man. The horse's movements were calm and deliberate, as though he knew the man was someone safe, someone who could help. Jessica hesitated, but her legs moved on their own, the pull of Thunder's presence guiding her forward. When they were finally close enough, the man stepped forward and his features came into view. It wasn't her father. It wasn't anyone she knew. His face was weathered, worn, but there was kindness in his eyes that she hadn't seen in so long. The man knelt down in front of her, a soft smile on his lips. "You're not alone," he said gently. His voice was deep and soothing, yet there was an authority to it that made Jessica feel strangely comforted. "I've been watching over you." Her mind raced, confused by the man's words. She didn't understand what he meant. Who was he? And why had Thunder led her to him? "Thunder knows you need help," the man continued, his gaze shifting between Jessica and her horse. "He's been watching over you too." Jessica's eyes widened in disbelief. How could this stranger know that? How could he know anything about the pain she had been living with all these years? Thunder had always been there for her, but this was different. The man's presence felt like an answer to a question she didn't even know how to ask. And then, just as suddenly as it had all started, Thunder stepped away, standing at the edge of the clearing and watching them silently. It was as if the horse had completed his mission, brought Jessica to the one person who could give her hope. The man extended his hand toward Jessica. She didn't hesitate this time. Something about his calm demeanor, his reassuring presence, made her trust him. Slowly, she placed her hand in his, feeling a warmth she hadn't experienced in years. "Let's get you away from here," he said softly, his hand still holding hers, pulling her gently forward. "You don't have to face this alone anymore." As she followed him, the weight she had been carrying for so long started to feel a little lighter. Thunder's task had been completed, but Jessica's journey was just beginning. The man, her newfound protector, guided her away from the darkness of the woods, and for the first time in a long while Jessica felt like there might be a way out, a way to heal. But the question remained. Would the man be able to help her escape the dangers lurking at home? Or would her troubles follow her, no matter where she went? Jessica's world began to settle into a rhythm as the days passed, but a quiet tension remained. Despite the peaceful surroundings of the cabin deep in the woods, she couldn't escape the weight that lingered in her heart. The memories of her father's violence, the days when every step she took was filled with fear, never fully left her. Still, she tried to push them aside, focusing instead on the safety and comfort Frank had provided. Every day she grew stronger, more confident in herself, but that inner turmoil, the one that whispered of her past, the one that seemed to haunt every step she took, still gnawed at her. Frank was patient with her. He never rushed her, never forced her to speak when she wasn't ready. And, little by little, Jessica began to trust him, to let down the walls she had built around herself for so long. He would often spend hours with her, helping with chores, or simply sitting with her on the porch, the silence between them comfortable, never awkward. On the morning of the 4th day, Jessica stood at the edge of the cabin's porch, gazing at the rolling hills. The sight should have been calming, but the unease she felt about her past still clouded her mind. Thunder had been with her all along. He was the one who guided her to this new life, the one who had always protected her. She missed him terribly, but she couldn't help but wonder if she had made the right decision in running away. Was it possible to start over, to escape the suffocating grasp of the life she had left behind? As she pondered these questions, she felt Frank's presence behind her. He had been watching her from the doorway, sensing that something was still troubling her. "Jessica," he called gently, his voice breaking the silence. "I know you've been through more than anyone should have to endure, but you've made it here. You're safe. Whatever happens, you're not alone anymore." The warmth of his words was comforting, but still a part of Jessica felt disconnected. She wasn't used to being treated with such kindness, such respect. It felt unfamiliar. It felt too good to be true. Would she ever truly be free from her past? Or would it always shadow her, lurking just behind the calm facade of this new life? Frank noticed the conflicted expression on her face and took a step forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to talk about it now, but when you're ready, I'm here to listen. I want you to know that whatever you need, I'm not going anywhere. You're safe here, Jessica." But even as he spoke, Jessica couldn't help but feel torn. She had finally found a place where she was safe, where she was loved and cared for. But her past was never far away. No matter how much time passed, she couldn't erase the years she had spent trapped in fear. She couldn't escape the memories of the man who had hurt her, the father who had never shown her love, only cruelty. The pain of leaving everything behind to run here, to this peaceful sanctuary, felt heavy in her chest. And though she wanted to believe that she could leave it all behind, Jessica knew deep down that one day she would have to confront it. But would she be strong enough to face her past? To face the man who had taken everything from her? As she looked out over the hills once again, Jessica made a quiet promise to herself. She would heal. She would find her strength, but she would never forget where she came from. No matter what came next, she would face it head-on, with Thunder by her side, and with Frank's unwavering support to guide her. But the question remained. Was this truly a fresh start, or was she just running from something she couldn't escape? The days began to blend together for Jessica. She slowly found herself trusting Frank more each day, her heart opening up in ways it never had before. Thunder remained by her side, a constant protector, as though he too knew that his job wasn't just to keep her safe, but to heal the scars that ran deep inside of her. The cabin, once a symbol of escape, was now a home, a place where peace was no longer an illusion, but a reality she could grasp. But the peace she longed for was often interrupted by the flashes of memories from her past. They came in fleeting moments, when Frank spoke of his own family, when he shared stories of laughter and joy. She wanted to have that too. She wanted to believe that happiness could be hers, that she could live a life unburdened by fear. But those thoughts only lasted for moments, before her mind spiraled back to the pain she had fled. And then there were the nights. Those nights when the silence seemed to echo too loudly, when the loneliness pressed in on her chest, making it hard to breathe. She could feel her past creeping in, the memories of her father's abuse like shadows she couldn't shake. The longing for the love she never had was deep inside her, pulling her under like an anchor. The weight of it almost suffocated her at times. One particularly quiet evening, as the golden hues of the setting sun bathed the cabin in warmth, Jessica sat with Frank on the porch. Thunder lay at their feet, his eyes calm and watchful. The evening was serene, the soft chirping of crickets filling the air. But inside Jessica, a storm was brewing. It was time to stop running from what haunted her, time to let go of the fear. "I don't know if I can do this, Frank," Jessica whispered, her voice barely audible. "I want to be strong, but I'm still so afraid. I can't stop feeling like my past is chasing me, like it's always going to be there, waiting to pull me back." Frank, who had been silently watching her, reached over and took her hand. "Jessica, you're already stronger than you know. You've come so far already. You're not the same person who left all that behind. I believe in you." For the first time in what felt like forever, Jessica allowed herself to believe him. For the first time, she felt like there was a chance, no, a real possibility, that she could finally be free. Not just from the physical scars, but from the emotional ones too. And then, as if on cue, Thunder nudged her hand with his nose, as though he could sense her inner turmoil. Jessica looked down at the dog, his eyes filled with a quiet understanding, and a sense of peace washed over her. He had been her strength when she had none. He had been the constant reminder that no matter how broken she felt, there was still hope, still love, still a chance for healing. With a deep breath, Jessica stood up, wiping the tears that had begun to fall. "Thank you, Frank. Thank you for believing in me. And thank you, Thunder. I'm going to face this, no matter how hard it gets." As she looked out at the horizon, she knew there was still a long road ahead. The scars of her past would take time to heal, and there would be moments of doubt, but for the first time in years, she felt ready to face them. With Thunder by her side and Frank's unwavering support, she knew she wasn't alone. For the first time in a long time, Jessica realized that healing wasn't just about running away from the pain. It was about confronting it, embracing it, and moving forward. And in that moment, she knew that whatever the future held, she would face it with strength, with courage, and with the love of a loyal dog by her side. If you believe in the power of healing and the unwavering loyalty of animals, share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories of strength, love, and resilience.